The process of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies list of candidates to constitute the SABC Board has been concluded. Now, this comes after more than 5 months of a long and drawn-out process dating back to last year, December, when the National Assembly adopted and shortlisted 12 names and a reserve pool of 3 names that were submitted to President Cyril Ramaphosa for consideration. Now, last month, the President wrote back to the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Ngqakula, seeking clarity on the 12 recommended candidates and the 3 additional names, requesting that they be referred back to the committee for further consideration. Now, yesterday, the committee's legal advisors found the President's request was unlawful, unconstitutional, and that the resolution of the National Assembly recommendations were legally executed and remain in place. So, to discuss these latest developments, we joined virtually by President of the Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers Union, BMAU, Hannes de Visson. Hannes, good morning. Thanks so much for speaking to us this morning.
Good morning, Sakina. Thank you.
So let me just get, your view on this delay of the appointment of an SABC board, and more importantly, the impact that this has had on the operations of the SABC.
Well, first of all, I think the impact is the one that is the most important one. We are on record. We previously said that way back when the board was not appointed, the new board, it wasn't a crisis at that point in time, because we believed it was a short-term issue that would have been resolved quickly, because we heard about the vetting that was not done and some government printers that was not available to print. That has come and passed now. And the main big concern at this point in time is that the SABC would sit without a CEO and a CFO within a month or so time. And that would, of course, create a severe crisis, especially the CFO. I believe that an organization can be without a CEO for some time, but a CFO, it's quite important. So that is the impact on the SABC. Then there is, of course, certain things that the board must do apart from the overseeing function that they have. There are certain expenses that falls outside the powers of a CEO and the non-executive or the executive directors, and therefore one needs a board, and of course they must also they must approve the strategic plans of the SABC and the way that it's going. So that in itself also creates quite a serious problem for the SABC. I believe that there were already issues around contracts that the SABC executives, as they are now, were not able to sign. And there was, in fact, a threat of some sporting events that could not be broadcasted as a result of that. In terms of the issue of the appointment of the board, yes, we all along knew that there was not a problem with the way that the Portfolio Committee and the National Assembly has run the process. What seemingly has confused the President was the fact that 3 extra names were submitted. We heard yesterday in the Portfolio Committee that the legal advisor of the SABC, a senior advocate, has said that that is not a problem. So there was an undertaking in that committee that there would be a letter written to the Speaker, and that the appointment of the board should go ahead with without any further delay.
So, as you point out, some of the concerns operationally for the SABC, we've seen others who have a vested interest or otherwise in the SABC, because this is a public broadcaster, and going into an election year, an election that is particularly sensitive, and some would argue perhaps the most contested election since we've attained democracy in this country. People have expressed concern about this delay and what it means. And here's a tweet that I want to put up from a former board member, Michael Markowitz, and what he says on it. He says this in response to a tweet that was put out by the Department of Communications showing the Minister of Communications, Mondli Gungubele, and his deputy as well, meeting with the SABC leadership. They put out that particular tweet with those pictures. And Michael Markowitz's tweet then in response to this, he's a former board member, he says, now ministers have been interacting directly with SABC executive directors for 170 days now. This is unhealthy proximity and it's a breach of the shareholder compact and impacts on SABC's independence. With employment contracts of key execs ending soon, as you just pointed out, the board's absence for 5.5 months has added significance. So let's talk about that, because that obviously, given the history of the SABC, should be very worrying.
Well, in fact, it is, and that is inappropriate. It is unhealthy. It should not happen. And the Portfolio Committee did visit the SABC last week. We had a meeting with them, and we pointed out to them, in particular, for instance, the fact that that they cannot, not the National Assembly, no one can renew contracts of any of the directors currently, and they cannot also extend those contracts. So that would come to an end. But yes, it is a concern if there is that a direct intervention from the ministry dealing with managers at the SABC directly. That is something that, remember, there was a case between SOS and the minister, and the court has found that the minister should not be involved in the affairs of the SABC, and that seems to start happening now again. And of course, with the appointment of the board, we hope that would end very soon. But it is cause of concern.
So, as I say, given the history of the SABC, one would have to be particularly sensitive about how you go about navigating these matters. But going back to Parliament and that particular process, now, it almost seems, nonsensical the way it has been drawn out and the reasons for which it was drawn out, because the confusion that stemmed from the pool of 3 names that were almost reserved, as an example in this instance. What was your understanding around that? Because the legal opinion from Parliament made it very clear that there was nothing wrong, there was nothing untoward. And the general understanding was, of course, that was a pool that perhaps could be dipped into in the order in which they are listed, provided that someone, for whatever reason or people, withdrew from the list of 12. What was your understanding, and what do you make of how it has been drawn out?
So we know that there is unhappiness about certain people on the board, and then let's name them. The former head of news, Patishwa, was nominated, and she was then recommended by the National Assembly, and we know that there was some unhappiness on her being on the board, especially around the fact that there was a disciplinary inquiry. What we know is that that there was a settlement with her that was reached. You don't settle with an employee if you are not at fault, and we know that there was a settlement. What that settlement was, we don't know. Apparently, it is also a state secret, but nevertheless, there should have been and would have been no confusion that 12 names were recommended. And what might have created slight confusion was the fact that 3 extra names were added. And I think that maybe it was the proactiveness of the Portfolio Committee that has caused the conflict, I believe, or the confusion at least. I believe that might have been used. When one looks at it now, it might have been used to delay the appointment of the board. Why that delay has been caused and what the reason for that would be, one can only speculate about that. But what was clearly recommended by the Portfolio Committee and that was approved by everyone was 12 names. Subsequently, one of those people withdrew. They are no longer up for serving on the SABC board. And what must now happen, and that was discussed yesterday as well in the committee, is one of those 3 names. And those are people that has been already vetted. They've been ranked by the National Assembly and the Portfolio Committee. So the president must appoint the 11 people that has been already recommended. He does not have a choice whether he can change or interchange any of those names for the extra 3. It was made very clear, and one would see that also in the legal opinion that was drafted by a senior advocate, that it was recommended in such a manner that those 3 names will only be used in the event that one board member resigns, as has happened now before the appointment, or during the course of the period of this, the tenure of this board, that the Portfolio Committee can replace that board member with one of those that has been vetted already and ranked as 1, 2, 3 to be appointed. So there should have been no confusion, or there should at least be now no confusion on how to proceed to appoint the new board.
And of course, we are now at this point where we heard the opinion from the legal advisors there in Parliament. But of course, on the weekend, last weekend, we saw reports that the ANC had instructed its MPs to restart the selection process. Now, that in itself, going with what you've just explained, Hannes, is of course totally bizarre because the selection process was open. We even viewed it. So it was that transparent. So, you know, what do you make of that?
Well, surely that we believe was an attempt to get certain people out that has already been put in. We don't know why there was a change of heart to remove those people, because that was a unanimous decision to appoint those 12 board members. And as has been explained very clearly yesterday by the legal advisors, not only from the Parliament, but also an external legal advisor, that the Portfolio Committee would be, and they used the Latin term functus officio. That means they cannot now tamper with their own decision unless there is an entire new process to withdraw or to declare that decision being invalid. And that simply means that there should be another public process that would take us months to complete, to compile a new list of possible board members. So clearly there was an attempt to politically tamper with the current board, and that should not be allowed. And I believe that if that happens, there is currently already pending legal action against the president in the Constitutional Court for not appointing the board, and that legal process would then continue. And I believe that other interested parties, like ourselves, would then join into that process to have the board that has been already vetted, nominated, to have that board appointed as soon as possible.
And just coming to operational issues and the impact of this delay on employees here at the SABC, Hannes, we know that contract negotiations for your independent contractors, for example, take place at this time. And it's been stymied by what's been going on and the lack of a board at the SABC, because there was, for example, talk that you couldn't offer any sort of increase because there's no board to approve that. So what happens in that instance? Because as independent contractors, one would imagine it would probably be easier with permanent employees. Do you now go back after the fact and say, okay, we will offer you an increase, given that people haven't seen an increase in about 3 years? Is this something that you could retrospectively address?
It's most certainly something that could and should be addressed retrospectively. The SABC is broken. The staff morale is extremely low. And that is one of the reasons that we need to get a board as soon as possible, because we have complained about what is going on operationally at the SABC. As we speak now, and I don't want to personalize issues, but we have employees that has refused to work outside their contractual hours, and they are now faced with suspension. And that has been escalated quite high to senior management, and nothing has been done. So operationally, we need a place where we can complain about the fact that employees did not get an increase, that independent contractors' contracts cannot be renewed, and there can be no negotiations around that. But that is most certainly something that should and must be addressed, and it will be addressed as soon as we have a board, because all of these things impact on the morale of staff, on the productivity of the SABC. We know of a lot of people that has left the moment people reach an age where they can take early retirement, not even normal retirement. They take that and they go. A lot of people are looking for other jobs. We are killing the SABC by not having a board, by having this climate inside the SABC, by not offering employees not even a 1% increase, whilst those employees have been juniorized in terms of the restructuring process. Job titles were simply changed. People were asked to apply for positions, and they were appointed on lower salaries, lower scales, lesser benefits. And those are the kind of issues that we need to address with a new board as soon as possible, because we are going to kill the SABC.
Nosiviwe, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. President of the Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers Union, BMAU, Nosiviwe there, talking to us about the report that was released by the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies and their recommendations on President Cyril Ramaphosa's letter on the nominated list of names for the SABC board.